Yes. Good evening, and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Granville Board of Education. Would you please rise and pledge allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Go ahead and take the roll, please.
Mr. Davis.
Here.
Mr. Brown.
Here.
Dr. Corner.
Here.
Mr. James. Mr. Cullen.
Here.
Combination.
Commendations, please.
Great. This is always the best part of the meeting from my perspective. First up in commendations this evening, we have GHS students and visual arts teacher Sarah Robert and visual communications teacher Jennifer Kinsley, who submitted artwork to the Scholastic Art and Writing Competition in December. And two of the pieces of artwork were selected for an upcoming exhibit. So Ellen Miller, an advanced art student, earned a Silver Key Award for her watercolor piece, Bento Box. An honorable mention for her watercolor, American People in Joy. Kate Faber submitted $2 for CTEC's photo composition and digital design classes, earned her a gold key and honorable mention. Their work will be featured in the 2018 Central Ohio Regional Scholastic Art Awards exhibition, February 12th through the 22nd, at the Columbus College of Art and Design's Attic Gallery and the Kansenzi Center. I probably just brutalized those. Congratulations, and come out with your teachers.
Photos, but everybody's sick.
Yeah.
Will you take pictures for us?
Yes, I would be happy to.
Here, well, come on over here.
I did get a yearbook came with the university.
That's good.
Next, the board would like to recognize the service and excellence of the Granville High School football coach, J.R. Lee. J.R. was named as head football coach after the 2017 season focused on his health. And just as his football teams have rolled up stats over the years, J.R. has also completed some impressive stats for his 2 years as an assistant coach and 9 years as head coach. His record was 67-27. He was Central District Coach of the Year in both 2009 and 2012. He was a lead coach of the year in 2009, 11, 12 for the Mid-State League, and in 13 and 14 for the Lincoln County League. His teams qualified for the playoffs in 2009, 12, 14, and 17. During his Granville career, his players won all Central District honors 79 times, and 28 players won all Ohio honors. We are still lucky, though, because J.R. will still be teaching a government class at GHS, but we are certainly going to miss him on the field next fall. And if there's one thing I can say about J.R. Lee is, to a person, what people say about him is he is all about developing young men. And I think that's absolutely critical. We need people like him in all of our young people's minds and in their hearts. So congratulations, JR. We typically give this to retirees, but you're special enough. So it's our Granville Blue Ace, which is a glass full Blue Ace that from the works. They're unique, they're one of a kind, just like JR. So congratulations. honors. Will present Granville Executive Village School District with the 2017 Award of Distinction for Financial Audit and a comprehensive annual financial report. Tim, thank you for being here. You can lift that up.
Thanks for having me here. A lot of times when the Auditor State's Office, you hear about us, it's usually we're bringing bad news. Tonight's one of those great nights that we thoroughly enjoy, and we get to bring some good news. Tonight I'm going to present the Auditor State Award with Distinction, which is the highest award the Auditor State's Office presents. The Auditor State Award with Distinction is given to those entities that file an annual CAFR, timely financial reports in accordance with the GAAP, as well as receive a clean audit report. Clean audit report means your financial audit does not contain any financial recovery, material citations, material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, and single audit findings, or any questionable cost. Because I can't speak, I can understand this. But the important thing I can understand is how hard it is to get this award. Believe it or not, there's 5,800 levels of government in the state of Ohio. The Auditor State's audits all 5,800 of them, from the Ohio State University to the smallest township in Benton County. And out of those 5,800, roughly right around 5% of them receive this award. So we're considered operating in the 95 percentile, and please forgive the joke of the A straight. So now I'd like to present the Auditor State Award with Distinction to Mike Silver.
Usually we say if you came for commendations, you can leave at this time. You don't have to spend the night here. But if you'd like to stay, feel free to stay. So I'd actually like to invite Ethan Shaw, who comes here regularly to give a student report. But his student report is going to be a little different this time because he's actually talking about his Take Action project. So I am going to get it ready and this. Show you. Does that do for me? Sweet. Check it. Sure. It's live. My name is Ethan Shaw, and I'm here to talk about my Take Action project. So I'm not sure if you guys have gone to AP Enviro students in here before, but what Take Action is it's essentially every year AP Enviro students are tasked with coming up with some project that promotes anything related to the environment, whether it be operations in the land lab or in the GHS garden. And so this year, what we in my group decided to do was a living wall. So what is a living wall? So I'll kind of go into a bit of the background of how I got this idea. So last summer when I was looking at colleges, we were down in DC and I was looking at George Washington. And on the tour, they took us into their physics building where they had this giant wall of what literally looked to be just like a garden. So just plants everywhere scaling on this massive building. And I thought that was really cool. And they said, it's the favorite building for kids and students to come study in, and it's pretty much the favorite building on campus, period. And it was really cool to go from that DC environment into the physics building where they just had this huge wall of plants. And so what a living wall essentially is it's a vertical garden indoors. And so why install a wall? Well, besides being aesthetically pleasing, the wall also helps to improve air quality as plants act as a natural filter for various toxins in the air. And there's actually been a lot of studies that have been done about how indoor plants reduce stress levels. And around 85% of humans' time is spent indoors. And so the inside almost acts as like a subconscious barrier on the human psyche. And so the plants inside almost act as a subconscious reprieve to the human psyche. And so when we initially started this project, we only had the air quality control and stuff like that acts as a natural air conditioner. But we were kind of surprised to find that it actually does help reduce stress levels, and there's been dozens of studies conducted on that. And also, a lot of the Take Action projects that have been done have been out in the land lab or out in the garden, and they're not really seen or appreciated by a lot of students in GHS. And so what this living lab would do is it would actually promote Take Action awareness and get kids interested and more involved with environmental science at GHS. So going into the actual design of the living wall we picked out, the frame is a self-laddering frame. It's kind of like a pocket. So essentially you fill up the reservoir in the back, and you have to fill it up about every 2 weeks, and then will naturally water into it. And for installation, for every single pouch you have, it's simply one screw frame holder that you then put into the wall, and then the actual plant holder just goes right onto that frame, almost like the easy click picture holder things. And so for plants we chose, we want to make sure that we choose plants that require very low maintenance with sunlight and low water. So we have philodendrons, peace lilies, and devil's ivy, and all these plants are hypoallergenic. And for some reason, NASA did a study on these plants related to clean air. I don't know why NASA did that, but it's out there. And all these plants pass that test, and they're all perennials. So that means they do not have to be replaced annually, and they will bloom every year on their own. And so you guys got a good audit report, so be right there on us. Because of here, we've actually already secured our funding. Our teacher, Mrs. Moon, has already offered to give us some of her PBL funding for it. And we're also partnering with the senior class officers to include this as part of the class gift. Talking with the senior class president, he wants to give a work to charity this year. So we were going for a more low-cost option. And so the frames are going to cost around $300, and we've estimated the plants to be around $100 to $150 for about a total of $450, and that will all be covered. We've already secured the funding. And so another thing we looked at was the future maintenance, how this project's going to go into the future. So in the summer, there's the summer gardening program that Mr. Redding puts in, and since these plant holders are self-watering, those gardening students will just be able to fill them up once every 2 weeks. They're going to be at the school. And then if that's not an option, there's always the option to replant in the fall. And then students in AP Environmental Science next year can uptake this project and to maintain or even expand, as the frames we chose are coming back up fours, and they're single, so you can always expand. And location-wise, we were thinking of either putting this in the lunchroom, in the hallway by the study hall room, or in that band hallway. And I really like that, or the hallway leading to the band and orchestra rooms. And I really like that hallway because there's a lot of light, a lot of natural light, and that hallway is pretty sparse. So I think it could liven that up a lot. And both middle school and high school students go through that hallway, so more people will be able to appreciate the wall. And that concludes the, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
So, thank you for the presentation. What's your timing on this? How long from when you decide to actually implement before you think the wall is in place?
So, ordering materials-wise, we can order it to Home Depot in 7 days, free shipping. Plants, again, we just go to Home Depot. The main thing would be we would require some of the school's help for the installation, as you would probably need to leave the school. Yeah. The screws for screwing the wall, but besides that, I mean, we could get all the materials pretty quickly. How big is it? How many platforms? So we're ordering 4 sets of 4, 16. I forget the actual dimensions, but I'm trying. we have a visual representation. Take around, maybe, not too late, actually wait, oh, I do have it. About 9 to that, and that's how big it would be. And so size is, we're pretty flexible in the size, but we thought if we put it in a area where there's more wall space, we can make it bigger versus less wall space, we can make it smaller, just depending on where we put it.
That's great. Good stuff.
So, Ethan, talk to me a little bit about the actual Take Action project process. You know, is it something that you find value in? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think I find value if people actually follow, and this is more of like an individual thing, if people actually follow through, because it's very easy for kids to just kind of put off stuff, say, oh, you know, we didn't get the bureaucratic approval, we didn't go through the motions, or we got denied. And I see a lot of that, but I think the projects that do come out where kids actually put the effort into it, some great stuff comes out of it. I think it's very valuable that way. It's just some kids don't really have that drive to do that. But I think it's very valuable for the kids that put the effort into it and good things come from it.
So let me ask you, on the issue of students who get discouraged by the bureaucracy, what can we do as a bureaucracy to help with that process and maybe make it less daunting?
I mean, I'm really comfortable in settings like this. I know a lot of kids are very uncomfortable with maybe coming to a school building. I don't know why, but it's just how they are. One thing is, a lot of kids just don't really have that experience in how to actually like go about it. So maybe I'd say a bit better direction in how to deal with the bureaucratic system and some more guidance in how to deal with those emotions, I think would be beneficial.
Thank you.
But I'll give you guys credit. You guys are a lot more responsive than the village council. I know something I have to go through them, and I hear nightmare stories about that. So.
I love that next time. We appreciate it. Excellent, thank you.
That's great.
You're going to implement that this spring then?
Yeah, if it gets approval, which I have the sheet right here. So.
So how are you going to stop Mr. Reddy from playing carrots in there?
I can do it by this year, but next year,
It's out of your hand.
It's a whole nother ballgame.
You have several other approvals necessary, but the superintendent has signed.
Hey, it's going to come naturally.
I was gonna say that when the superintendent signs off. This whole bureaucracy figured out.
It really was.
Okay. Talk a little about transition.
Definitely.
No, I need some additional questions. I'm rubber stamped with the superintendent. Yes, I will sign it. Get my green pen. Okay.
Okay, next we have a presentation from a couple of representatives that are implementing the new drug program, Too Good for Drugs. Remember, this was part of the overall look at substance use or abuse in the district. I would like to say that the two presenters are here with their entire team is sitting in front of them, here for support. So we have all buildings represented. So Susie and Carl are going to do the presentation for you. We implemented this first thing this year, so this is new and everything. So, thank you very much for coming, and the floor is yours.
I don't know if everybody can hear us well enough. I'm Susie Nunn and Carly Worrell. And as Mr. Brown said, we're just here to present how things are going so far this year with the Two Good Drugs curriculum. It was adopted K-12, so we're seeing this in every building in Granville. We'll go through who's teaching it within each building in case there's questions on that. And because it's the first year, we don't have all the answers as far as how it's going to look moving forward. What we do know is how it's gone so far, and to talk to you about what we see moving forward that may be helpful to add or supplement along with what we are already doing.
We're kind of at different places really at the building. So at the high school level, I've already gone through this I've gone through my entire curriculum this first semester, so I'm getting ready to go through that again for the second time to finish up this school year. Other people haven't gone through the other grade levels yet, so they're just the way they're able to get into the buildings and things. So we kind of feel like this presentation might be a little out front of where we would have all the information, but we talked as a committee and got together and kind of came up with some basic overviews of how do we think it's going? What are some strengths that we see now with what we have been able to do so far? And then what are some things that we want to improve on or change or modify a little bit or just add a little bit maybe as we go forward, which I think is with any curriculum, we're gonna change it just a little.
The basics of the curriculum as we talked across all the buildings and what is in the curriculum for each grade level is common. There's common language. The themes are the same throughout. Obviously, it builds upon itself. But you can see the curriculum basics that are listed up there we see in each building level. There's also the parent and community component, which I know is the biggest selling point in this curriculum in comparison to others. And we can hit a little bit on how that is working across each building because it does look different at different grade levels. But we are working on improving the parent and community component in the future, and we can talk about that a little bit more going forward. But the slides going forward are just going to talk about how it's being implemented in each building specifically, the strengths that we see of the program thus far, and again, where we kind of see it in the future.
So Jeff kind of alluded to this. This is our first year of implementation, so we're again going through. I've gone through the entire curriculum for the high school level, but other people are at different spots for the different buildings.
Another example of how that's going, like in the middle school, the kids have PE and health, and they only have it for a semester, typically once in 7th grade and once in 8th grade. So we have our curriculum that we pass out as a sample as 7th grade in the high school. We also have an 8th grade component, so we kind of have a part 1 and part 2 to teach for the middle school. And we do have a couple students that take it year round, so they're sitting through what is part 1 or 7th grade this year. Next year we will implement and put forward the grade 8 or part 2. So our current 7th graders will be the first middle schoolers that see the entire middle school curriculum piece in its whole. And right now I could only speak for half of what the middle school curriculum is, where that's different for Carly at the high school, and I know the elementary and intermediate school have their own scheduling things too that make theirs different. So just to try to enlighten what we mean by that being different across the board.
Each program, so whether it's at the high school or middle school or what, it's 10 lessons. So we're trying to get through a lesson in a class period pretty much. And we'll talk about what the strengths and weaknesses kind of the program. If we're going through it the first time, it takes us a little longer to get through a lesson than, say, someone that's done it 5 times or 10 times. So those are things that we might catch on quicker and be able to adapt and things, but typically it's 25 to 50 minutes, and I know at the high school level it's 50 minutes every single time that I go through it, whether we have more discussion or not. So we're still kind of feeling that out, but it's 10 lessons per grade level is what we're working through, and then you can see who school counselors and nurses are kind of combining at the younger grade levels, and then we have more of a captive audience in the health and PE classrooms as they get older. Okay, so strengths. There was a lot of strengths. So when we met together, there was a lot of positives that we liked about the curriculum. It seemed that the activities at each grade level were engaging, and the kids were, that wasn't like pull out your textbook and write down, it was nice activities. There was hands-on things. At the high school level, we're doing role plays, and we're doing board games, and we're doing card games, and I'll be honest, at the beginning I was like, are these kids going to think this is like corny, that we're going to sit down and do like a board game together, or we're going to sit down and do some card games? But they actually were very relevant and very easy to understand, and they were games that they have played before. So I'm sure you've probably heard of Apples to Apples before that game. So we played a game like that at the high school level with like decision making and things like that, finding empathy for friends. So it was a game like that, or the game Spoons, where you have to try and get the common cards and you grab the spoons. So it was kind of like that. They're games that they have known before in the real world, and we were kind of pulling it out into the classroom. So a lot of the stuff that we've done at the high school level, and I know talking to the younger grades, is that they were more relevant, they were pretty hands-on. I know there was singing going on at the elementary level.
Middle school had a lot of skits and role plays, and when they get to say it because it's on a card and not because of their own example, they kind of get into that, and then it opens up a really good discussion afterwards as far as what they just acted out. So I think as far as across the grade levels, what activities they have in the curriculum are spot on with what the kids need, which is helpful.
I think consistency and structure, K through 12, that was like huge. That we were trying to find a program that was like, are we teaching the same thing? Are we using the same common vocabulary? And are we, getting this message across at early ages and being able to build upon it? Because to be honest, when they get to the high school level, by that time it's too late for a lot of these conversations to start. So this has been a really good conversation for us as colleagues, that we're having this conversation across the board anyways. And it just feels like consistency is key with this. So hopefully at the younger age, they're getting that vocabulary, and then we're just building on it by the time they get to us.
And I appreciate this was adopted and put in place for K through 12, because our state standards don't have too much specific when it comes to drugs, which is, in my opinion, terrible. And thankfully, as a school district, we've come together to realize the importance of what all of this is providing our kids, and how having that language the same K through 12, where they're going to say, they're talking about this again, they're going to see the importance of that. And I think it just, even though we're all making it our own and putting our own spin on it in the ways that we can, the kids are going to see the commonality between it, and I think there can't be enough said for that. Moving forward, we've talked about different supplemental ideas. There are things that were missing in the curriculum. We weren't sure how much it might feel was missing until we were actually teaching it and what the kids were asking questions about. I believe the younger grades have seen the most questions from the kids is, well, what about e-cigarettes, and what about the brain chemistry that we talked about, and isn't this part of the brain? So trying to figure out how to take, and this goes with that last bullet too, of adjusting this to the needs of Granville students. And that's going to come with time as we see what's missing and where are they needing more, or reaching out for further information, and not just teaching what is here and leaving that as is, but rather trying to figure out how to continually add to it and update it as we move forward. And I know the elementary school talked a lot about how the zones of regulation in intermediate school is something they've used in the past that is in this curriculum. However, it didn't have quite as much on that as they were hoping. So they're looking at trying to add more of that in, even though it is present in the curriculum. And then the parent component, the home workout component, we've each kind of looked at that a little bit differently, and how we've put that forward through a newsletter, or actually sending homework home that has a parent signature needed at the bottom to have a discussion at home, has been a little different, but trying to ensure that that's put into place and is an important piece of the curriculum, and something we've talked about as a program whole, K through 12. And then the time component this year, I think, has probably been one of the biggest struggles for us in figuring out how much time these lessons actually are going to take, especially with the discussion that you don't want to cut short, what the kids are bringing up as you teach it. and trying to ensure that the intermediate school who have these schedules I don't even understand have the time to get Amy and Tammy in those classes to get this information to the kids. And we have somebody that can give meds to the kids when Amy's not there. And, you know, we have the easy part when it comes to the schedules and when it's taught. It's the younger grades that, moving forward, we're trying to make sure we do have the right time set aside to make sure this is put into place correctly. So now I just would like to open it up for questions. Being a Granville adopted piece, I don't know that we're going to have every answer, but we've got a team here that can help.
Would you mind introducing the team?
Oh, yeah, sure. We have their names on, did we not have them? Yeah, right here. Oh, there it is, yeah. Elementary school, we got Isabel. They're the shy ones, they don't want to come to the and this is the nurse school counselor combo, which is the same at the intermediate school. We've got Tammy and Amy. Yeah. And we introduced ourselves.
Thank you. I think it's very powerful that you're all here. Thank you very much for coming and putting all that you have into this, right? It was a great process to select this, and it was kind of interesting to see the alternatives that we have, so it's really good to get some feedback that, and especially encouraging. It inspires conversation, right? Because I think that's kind of the whole purpose, is how we get those conversations happening and getting the role play to happen in a safe setting in the classroom, so that when they come across things later in life, they can do it. And how we adapt it a little better and get, parent community involvement and get these conversations at home, I think is going to be an important piece that we continue to work on, right? Because it's those inspiring those conversations that are going to help kids make the right decisions for them. So thanks for helping us noodle through how we're going to make that happen, and we'll continue to evolve this, but it sounds like it's off to a great start.
At the high school, it's in the health classes. So for those students who have taken health maybe a year or 2 years ago, are we getting this information to them in any way, or?
Right now, I don't think so.
Okay.
So I wish I had a better answer for that. But right now, we went through like a training at the beginning when we first implemented this program. We had someone come out from Too Good for Drugs, and they kind of did a training walkthrough with us about like the fidelity of the program and all of that stuff. I was the only person at the high school. Ann didn't do that, right? Okay. So we could look at that maybe, like spreading a little wider on who could implement that.
It's just good information, and obviously it's striking a chord with students. But
To clarify, are you meaning the current juniors and seniors? Are we going to get them this information?
Or sophomores, because if you take freshman,
true.
if you take it health like the summer after your freshman year, perhaps, then you might. We're going to start to catch everybody, so it's really only the.
We've talked about that, and it's hard right now to think about the program as a whole, because really the program starts in kindergarten.
Yeah.
So it's like, when are we really going to see the benefit of this?
Yeah.
It's going to be years from now.
Right.
And we've talked about too, like, okay, this is the first year, so when I'm like, Too Good for Drugs, the kids are like, okay, like, what's that? Like, am I going to get to the high school and I'm going to say, okay, Too Good for Drugs? They're like, oh, we've been talking about this since kindergarten.
So it's going to be well received. It would be the opposite of that.
Right.
Yet.
I thought one of the during the K-12, one of the good things though was that it builds on itself, so it's not, I think that was part of the problem of what we didn't have before. We were doing things in each building, but they were not necessarily coordinated, so the same message was just, eventually going in one ear and out the other, like just because they'd heard it. So I thought part of the program was that it builds on each other, so the messages are new each year, so even though it's Too Good for Drugs, it's still like new. That's
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And it was kind of going to what we hit on in the curriculum. One of the biggest things, at least we talked about in our meeting, about how the kids have received it. A lot of the kids thought it was going to be, we sit down and we talk about drugs and the side effects and what it looks like and what people on these drugs look like. And in middle school, I think we were 5 or 6 into the 10 lessons, and I had a middle school boy raise his hand and say, are we ever going to talk about drugs? And we had to take a step back and say, we're talking about goal setting and peer relationships and decision-making and refusal skills, because this is the foundation. And so seeing that they couldn't even connect that and having that conversation of how this curriculum is more the foundation of making sure you're going down the right avenue in life and you're we do hit on the drug stuff on the ends of each of these different grade levels, but helping them understand why are we talking about this when we are in a program called Too Good for Drugs. And actually bringing that to the front of the second semester and saying, here's what this curriculum is going to look like, help the kids, I think, realize before having to ask those questions how this is going to kind of play out, which is already an improvement. So I believe if we talk to you in 3 years, we'd be able to say a lot more than we are tonight.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any idea so far of how you're going to be able to measure the success of the program? I mean, are we going to just without surveys, or is it a community cultural change, and then how do you actually measure that?
They have a survey at the end of each of the grade levels. It's in the teacher's manual that we can make copies of and pass out to use their measurement. I don't know if that's what we're going to use going forward. We actually haven't hit on that. But I think it is worth a discussion to make sure that it is meeting the needs. And
That's a question for Ryan Bernath.
yeah.
It's going to be twofold. You know, one, the full enrollment assessment, but also, you know, we have student exit surveys across, you know, the district and the OES survey that we are now giving that look at some of the risky behaviors that students might engage in. So I think if we can see measurable differences at the aggregate level, then we'll be able to, we can never solely attribute it to one thing, but as long as it improves, I don't really care what it's attributed to, as long as it's improving. The one thing I wanted to say is, one, thank you for engaging in this process and learning a new curriculum quickly, trying to get it implemented. And as a former curriculum director, you're hitting on exactly what I used to say all the time. Every curriculum is not perfect. And you have to make adjustments, and it's your professionalism and your professional expertise that will help make this a perfect program. This is just, you know, limited initially, but it will get better every single year that you implement it. And consistency matters, and leadership matters, so thank you for leading this.
No, I think, you know, Mr. Brown said it right. The overall wellness of our students is very important to the board. We've hopefully shown that through a number of our actions, not least of which is this initiative to establish some consistency K through 12 that we think was probably needed. And you are all the pioneers of this program. And so your input, your thoughts about it are hugely important to us. So, you know, I certainly think we'd like to have you come back periodically and update us. And you know, hopefully we'll find ways to measure what we're doing, but also, you know, we'd like to hear your thoughts on how we should measure. And you know, meaningful ways that we can assess the program and how we might supplement it or support it in other ways. So thank you very much, all.
We're going to switch other PowerPoints.
Yeah, I would imagine they didn't get too many copies of it. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thanks so much.
The audience dwindles.
It's so good.
Thank you.
It's engaged.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is really good. It's nice to see, even in its infancy, that it's exciting.
Starting with like foot, right? It's going to grow from this.
Okay, next, as we're getting set up, the Amoresco group coming to talk about the energy project that we've undertaken over the last, 6 months, 7 months, and they're going to give an initial report. So, Tanya, would you like to?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to. Good evening. I am pleased to announce that we are near completion of the project, and it's been an exciting project. Where did Frank go? Did he leave?
See, hanging up plants.
Okay. He's hanging up plants. Yeah, he's got to get started on that now. So we've been very comfortable working with Amoresco. We feel like we've developed a great relationship with them, and we couldn't be happier with how the project is heading. Frank would reiterate that, I'm sure, if he's here, if he was in here, but he's not right now. And so Frank has done a great job too facilitating this project. So Amoresco is going to give an overview of the project, and they're also going to talk about the cost savings and then give you a quick look at the dashboard, which we'll be able to see and monitor our savings throughout the years to come. So we have Tyler Bagdasarian and Stephen Rogers from Amoresco who will present.
For the county rules. So you guys might remember this slide from about a year and a half ago. These were, the numbers, investment and savings for our project. Pretty much all of these things are done, the LED, retrofit, building automation, building dynamics. I'm not going to go into more detail on the next slides, but just to give you an overview of what the anticipated savings are and what the cost of the project was, and we have no reason to believe that we should not hit, or if not exceed, these savings numbers. So first was the LED retrofit district-wide, and this is now complete. It was the first component of the project to be complete. So over here we have the high school gymnasium, and this is a high school classroom. And you can see, it's hard to tell from the photo, but if you haven't already, I would suggest you go walk through some of these spaces, and that's what I did, and took some photos, and you can definitely, compared to conventional lighting, you can definitely tell it's an improvement, increased light quality. Obviously, they're using less energy, and you're going to have less maintenance costs over time. Additionally, strategically, we did install occupancy sensors in key areas. One of the great things that we were able to accomplish, because we did factor in utility rebates into the cost of the project, we actually got more rebates back from the utility than we originally anticipated. That doesn't always happen, but in this case we were lucky because you calculate the rebates based on that year, and these programs change every single year as they put out new programs. So that money that we got back in addition was reinvested into the project, and we were able to install some more occupancy sensors that weren't originally included in the scope of the project. The second component, and the things that were the main drivers of these projects was the need for new boilers. First in the high school, and the old boiler was sensitive to water quality issues, so we installed the creek boiler, and this one has a stainless steel heat exchanger, so it's not sensitive to the water quality issues that we had before, so that should be a problem of the past. We also updated the piping to a variable distribution system. There's a sample of the piping going to Mr. Rogers here, helped design. So, in addition to this new boiler, we will be keeping one of the Bryant boilers as a backup for redundancy. So, for some reason this one were to go offline, which we hope that doesn't happen, there would be a redundant boiler to kick on in that case. The intermediate school, we installed 2 Unilex boilers. You can see different model numbers. One is larger, one is smaller. Now these are high efficiency near condensing boilers, and they will operate in sequence to maximize the efficiency of both those boilers based on the output need of the temperature of the loop that's required for that, the temperature of that day. So the control system will optimize how much each is burning and when it's burning to maximize the efficiency. We also added variable speed pumping to the hot water distribution, so that speed on the pump is, instead of being constant and variable based on the need of the system. Feel free to stop me at any time if you have questions. I'm going to go over to Steve and talk about the BAS system and building dynamics.
So the additional scope of work that we had here was to retro-commission or optimize the existing Delta control system that the district had invested in. And this was just a point-to-point software exercise. There's a lot of ground to make sure everything is functioning optimally and that what we're telling it, the software to do is physically happening out in the space. Delta is a great system. It's something we use all over the place, and we have many, many customers that have it. But it's still just a building automation system that turns stuff on and off. It tells it what to do. It doesn't check the functionality of that. So what we went through is actually make sure all the sequences are there, make sure that it's to code, make sure that it's actually in the parameters that we want it to be, to make sure it's energy efficient. We've also developed a mechanical punch list of, here's the stuff we found. Yes, the software is telling this damper to open and close, but is it physically happening? If we found that to be not the case, we generated we're calling it, let's say, deferred maintenance or deficiency list of, hey guys, get this in the budget to start moving forward. So it kind of gives Frank and his team just sort of a playlist of, here's the stuff out there that we need to address. So we definitely did the building optimization and our building dynamics suite. Is there any questions on the optimization stuff? It's really something you've already invested in. We just polished it and made it energy efficient and just kind of did some more training on it. That rolls into the building dynamics. Building dynamics is the Ameresco software suite that sits on top of the Delta system. And there's two tiers to it as we're showing it here. The first tier is we're actually taking in utility by building information, and we're going to track it and trend it. And it's kind of what you've been doing in the past by taking previous utility bills and comparing them and make sure there's no crazy outliers. We're trending down as we expect to see as we do more energy efficiency work, that the gas consumption mirrors our heating degree days, things like that. And we're going to continue to do that, but in a more instantaneous and graphical way that we're going to historically share, and it's going to make it an automated process. The tier 2 is another analytic software that is going to give you the tools with Delta to basically move forward and keep this campus as energy efficient as possible. And I believe in it because, well, when we came here, one of our biggest challenges was we're doing a lot of stuff well with what you had in place. That was the challenge. You weren't crazy inefficient. You actually were doing some great stuff, and we could have praised you in that very early on. And that's what made some of this hard. With a better tool, with this tier 2, what it's actually going to do is scrape off the the Delta system. Look at mixed air, return air temperatures, the things that are turning on and off, but then do the analytics to make sure, does the output make sense of that too? And it's going to flag areas that are, let's just say, mixed air, return air is a great example. If I've got 100% outdoor air and I know what that is, and I've got no return air coming back, this mixed air temperature should be X, and if it's not X, something mechanically must be wrong, or my hot air is not matching what it should be, what's going on based on outdoor air temperature. It's going to make these flagged reports to optimize your sequences, to kind of alert your maintenance staff if things are going to happen, and that's all going in the tier 2 suite of this. Now, the training for that is sadly still coming. It's going to be February 28th. We're going to sit down with the team and go through what that's going to look like specifically. But that's going to be a tool that grows with the staff for years and years to come. That's going to be easily make sure not only are we hitting the energy savings that we anticipated, but expand. It's just going to give you that real time. Meter capabilities. And here come just a couple screenshots of what that could look like, just internal dashboards. Obviously, all customizable, but how I want to look at it. If you want to drill down to just one building, see at the bottom right, that's one of the historical trending from this year to next. You can obviously normalize that, do all the traditional sort of fun things as well. It's kind of it, guys. It's sort of high level. Any other questions?
How much kind of workload is it on an ongoing basis for maintenance people to kind of do monitoring the systems, optimization, and so forth? How many kind of person hours or equivalent effort should that be? Or if we spend more time, are we more efficient? What's your sense about the labor required?
The Delta system, which is the building automation system, BAS, the acronym. So if I slip into alphabet soup, please stop me. That's it. Building automation system. That's your daily maintenance tool. When you have a comfort complaint, whether it's hot, cold, that's generally, Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, that's going to be the first place you're going to open up and look at. That's there for your everyday operation. It's just a tool of the trade. As far as the optimization part of it, that's all automated inside that building suite. So it's going to do a couple things for you. We can, and this is all customizable, we can make it a little more complex if it's used that way, or we keep it high level. We can use flagged events that generate reports and email it out if we find low limits or something like that, or something that we find a mechanical failure, that's automated, will generate a report. As far as optimized sequences, meaning, let's just say warm-up schedules. We have a night setback where we're letting the building drift back 8 degrees at night, and when by 6:30 in the morning, we want to hit occupied temperature so people walk in, they're comfortable. And if it didn't hit that, do we create an alarm? Do we hit a report? Do we generate a report when we realize we don't need 2 hours to recover that? It'll actually tell us we only need an hour and a half if it's only 55 degrees outside. But if it's 30, give me more. That's the type of stuff that automation is going to generate for us. And we can do that quarterly, we can do that annually. The optimizing thing is kind of it's tuned.
Yeah. Does that automatically feed back in, so it makes adjustments to the system based on that?
No, it's not going to automatically change it. What it's going to do is generate those recommendations so we can actually sit down and look at it and say, yes, we approve that. We're just not going to give it autonomous, reschedule yourself and we'll deal with it. As we can all take a tribute, we can have the best intentions, reprogram, reput schedules, hit the go button, and then we hold the phone and wait for the first phone call. If you change something, it's a problem. But no, it's going to generate what it recommends, I guess would be a better way to put it, and then we still have to physically say, yes, let's make this change.
Okay. Great. Other questions? No?
I just say, I would applaud the board for continuing to look for ways to be as efficient as possible, because we ultimately turn around and use that money in the classroom. And so we tend to talk a lot about operating budgets, and what we're really talking about is what can we do to impact the classroom. Any money that we don't spend on facilities, we orient towards operating. So that's our ultimate goal and that's our mission. So I appreciate you taking this leap forward, and I'm sure there will be other projects that we entertain in the future. So.
Thank you for the report. Thank you, Tanya, Frank, and for all the work you're doing with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. We're now at the point in our agenda where we open the podium for public comment. If you would like to approach the podium and comment, please state your name and address and put forth your comments in 3 to 5 minutes. Moving on to board discussion. We don't have anything set for board discussion tonight. I don't know whether it's anything that's called for based on the absence of public comments, right? Right. Suggest we move past it. We need the board reports.
I don't really have one, but I guess what's coming down the road is we're working with CTEC to develop a new financial literacy course. And then we actually will be a whole business entrepreneur pathway. It hasn't actually come to the CTEC board yet, but I think we probably will have that at our next meeting, which is in 2 weeks. So we're a little bit ahead of that, but that is, I think, coming down the road. So that's kind of will be a good improvement on what we currently do and provide opportunity for students who are interested in business and entrepreneurship. So.
That'll dovetail nicely with the curriculum we're talking about.
Yes, exactly. It's one of those things that as we have opportunities to retool or relook at programs that have always been in existence, we ask the question, okay, what can this become? And having CTEC as a partner makes some of the decision-making a little bit easier. And because they have expertise that is well rooted in the business environment, and through their business advisory committees, we get the benefit of that knowledge. Stephanie Priestnall, Ryan Bernath, Matt Durst have spent a lot of time talking about the possibilities. All of them are exciting, and I think will be of significant value to our students.
One other quick CTEC update. I had the pleasure of being in a meeting today to talk about a new class that will be offered next year by our CTEC instructor, Ryan Johnson. It's AP Computer Science. And there's a couple of different versions of that class, and we had a great meeting where we engaged a couple of advanced computer science faculty to come along and us their perspective on the different options for curriculum and things like that. CTEC's a great partner in programming classes and the pathway they've already offered. This new AP computer science class, I think, is going to be significantly broader interest and engaging, and the new curriculum that we hope to follow is really a great one that is very much engaged in project-based learning, right? And more so than just coding, it really thinks about kind of that thought processes between how you put complex thoughts together and how you code them into algorithms, and a little bit of how you do the programming too. So I was neat to be here and neat to see the great collaboration that we have with CTEC in these new pathways. I think it's a really powerful way for us to get some new resources into the community.
Yes, excellent.
So it's great.
Thank you.
That's good. It's terrific.
It's fresh. I hadn't even heard that.
Thank you, Thomas. I can speak briefly about economic sustainability. As we know, the board has, for the last several years, been, I think, a catalyst or a provocateur, depending on your perspective, in encouraging economic sustainability discussions within the broader Granville community, designed to, frankly, stabilize and perhaps broaden the tax base, certainly with our goal in mind of making sure that we ensure the long-term financial stability for school funding, but also for the broader community and the health of the broader community. That led to a joint effort between the village council, the township trustees, and the school board to have some economic sustainability discussions. Those went on for a number of meetings. Those have sort of hit a lull, but out of those, and they may restart. But out of those discussions came two working groups that the board has been invited to participate in. I've been present at those meetings. One was a study group that was initiated by the village council to address the challenges at South Cherry Valley with the closing of the exit ramp on the highway. The businesses south of the highway are struggling. That group met a number of times, was chaired by Dan Finkelman of the Village Council and Bill Wilkin, who was a chair of the Village Council's Planning Commission. Came up with a number of recommendations after taking public testimony and public comment. And really the one takeaway there is there's a hope that there will be an initiative really sponsored by the Village Council to envision what could be done with the properties down on South Cherry Valley that are struggling as a result of the ramp closure, and also what can be done with the vacant land down there. There have been a number of proposals, not a number of proposals, there have been some proposals that have been made for some development. Some have been well received, others not. And so I think there's an ongoing process there to try and find the right solution, the right fit for that area. Economic development, business development that would be acceptable, would be welcome in the community and not be burdensome to the community. Those are ongoing. I don't know where they'll end up. Following that, there's been a second larger task force that's been formed jointly by the township trustees and the village council to address the approaching widening of the bridge at South Main Street across the highway. And that would be quite a lengthy and perhaps, well, certainly potentially disruptive project that will probably take the better part of a year and a half, will result in partial and at some points maybe full closure of the bridge. And it impacts economic sustainability in a couple of ways. One, not only access and as you approach the main entryway into the village, so that it will impact the widening of South Main Street. It impacts the location, the decision to relocate the fire station on South Main Street. And frankly, it impacts the extension of sewer and water from the village down Weaver Road and River Road, which will support the existing businesses that are there and maybe future businesses. So that group has met 3 times now. There's another meeting this Thursday night. We're honestly still on the discussion about the bridge and what sort of traffic signals and signage will occur there. We've not yet begun to delve into providing sewer and water on River Road and River Road, but that will happen next. And I think that will potentially impact significant business development, frankly, in an area where the business development needs to happen. That Weaver Road corridor is the right spot for any future growth here. So I don't have anything concrete to report other than there's a process, it's ongoing, it's painfully slow to suit me, but it's ongoing.
There's a whole lot of opportunity all along South Main there to optimize the traffic flow and things like that. Is there funding and interest for doing that? Because I mean, I've heard various concepts and discussions over the past many years, but not really seen anything concrete move forward. Is that integrated into this, in your sense, has the momentum to actually pick off something in time?
Something will happen, yes. Is there funding? Well, within the village, they certainly have funds available. Whether the council decides to devote them there or elsewhere, it remains to be seen. It's, in my view, a certainty that once the fire station is relocated up to South Main Street, they will have to widen South Main Street to at least 3 lanes and have a center turn lane and ingress and egress from the fire station. That should also happen at the same time as the bridge is being widened. The bridge is going to be widened to 3 lanes to allow longer turn lanes onto each direction of the highway and hopefully alleviate some of the backup in traffic that occurs there. Then the question is what happens with turning off of Weaver Road, turning left off of Weaver Road to come into the village on South Main Street and turning right off of River Road to go across the bridge as you exit the River Road businesses. The decision about whether or not to put a traffic signal in there has not yet been made and won't be made for a number of months. ODOT has not made a recommendation. But that will affect all of that traffic up and down South Main Street, and it becomes more complex because the fire station will be there too.
Have you moved the traffic signal right very close to the other traffic signal, or how does that?
It's in consideration. It's a very, in my layman's terms, it's a really lousy setup.
Children left out of there anytime after
It is.
people are leaving the park and all kinds of stuff.
So I think, if I would characterize it, and I'm not attributing this to comments from the ODOT engineers or anybody else's, my takeaway is really the decision about whether to put a traffic signal at the intersection of Weaver Road and South Main Street is designed to benefit traffic on Weaver Road or River Road, or the decision not to put a traffic signal there is designed to benefit the flow of traffic on South Main Street. Can't do both. One is going to be impacted, and so and there is no ideal solution, at least in what we've seen thus far. The traffic signal to me is impactful because of the desire to help businesses develop along, particularly Weaver Road, but also River Road. It would seem to me that at some point you're going to have traffic signals there.
There's some creative ideas that were thought of as a part of the development down there as well, where the River Road would dump out closer to where the fire station is going to be and so forth. Are those in serious consideration, or are there other alternatives that are not bad? Because it seems like all the ones I've heard are not, doesn't really fix the situation.
There's no perfect one. There's a discussion, and it hasn't yet come to that group, but there have been discussions over the years about a secondary access road off of River Road, which would go behind and parallel to South Main Street and come out somewhere close to where the fire station is, which could help alleviate traffic coming on and off of River Road, and doing for River Road. The question there is that does that then necessitate a traffic signal
for the
and does that help problems or cause further problems? And it's well beyond my pay grade as a novice traffic engineer to understand. Look, there's a lot that's happening. There's a lot that will happen in the community going forward. And one thing I would do is applaud both the leadership of the village council and the township trustees for getting out ahead of this, for being not only interested in how the bridge will look, the aesthetics and the functions and the traffic flow on the bridge, but also how it impacts ingress and egress to the village, and they're working closely to make sure that is as least disruptive as possible and ultimately helps traffic flow. But it's a tough intersection.
Thanks for being there and support that.
Action.
1101, resolution accepting the resignation of a board member. Any motion?
If no one makes a motion, you can't.
I suppose I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
I promise Andrew I would not do a big to-do about his departure, but I do want to make at least a small comment. You know, you always wonder about a new person joining the board and getting them up to speed. And I think Andrew's skill sets in communication, politics, understanding some of the issues that are facing our young people, he's been a significant asset to this board. And we've tackled some difficult issues with him on the board. And I appreciate his commitment to this community, and I've appreciated his feedback to me as the leader of the organization. And so I'm going to miss you. I wish you the best of luck. I'm going to miss your kids. So I hope that they do very well. And wish you and Don the best.
Thank you.
You know, really very much appreciated your, not just your insight, but your wisdom. The way you look at things in a fresh light has, I think, provoked a lot of discussion and consideration here, and it's been very, very beneficial, I think, to us overall. And we wish you wit. And we're sorry to see it go, but we know it's another exciting adventure for you and Don and your family. We wish you well. Can you open up a stranger?
Thank you. Let me just say that it's known that we are moving for diversity reasons, right? But I don't want that to take away from the discussions that this board has started about diversity in this community, right? I think until our village leaders kind of learn that we live in the 21st century here, and that while we may be a welcoming community, that doesn't mean we're an inclusive community, right? So I just want, like, me and my husband would be happy to stay here and fight the good fight, and we're white dudes, right? And I can't have my 3- and 4-year-old be the representation of their skin color, right, for their entire grade. So we're going to move on to diverse pastors in Columbus, but I know that you guys will continue that conversation and aggressively push for more diversity within our schools.
Yep.
So I applaud you for continuing that into the future.
Thank you. And thanks for getting me, because you were instrumental in having that conversation started, so I'm glad you were here for that, sir.
Okay. Take it away.
I suppose so.
Mr. Cohen.
Aye.
Ms. Deeb.
Aye.
Ms. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Chase.
Aye. With regret. Thank you.
11.2 is the resolution authorizing payment.
So moved.
Second.
This is the second step in the payment in lieu of transportation for students attending private schools. We deemed the transportation impractical at our last meeting, and this is the second step in that process.
This will allow us to make the payments to the families for their transportation.
These are simply the payments required by
Payments required by statute where they're going to a private school that was within 30 minutes of the district, but it is not practical for us to provide transportation services for the limited number of students who are attending these two schools.
Other questions? Take the vote, please.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Ms. Deeb.
Aye.
Dr. Coleman.
Aye.
Mr. Chase.
Aye.
Next is our consent agenda, 12.01A through C5.
Second?
Okay. I'd like to highlight, obviously, we have a nice laundry list of donations, which we always appreciate. We have our supplemental contracts, mostly for the spring sports we offer. And we have one resignation of an educational aide And then the leaves and absences are really related to FMLA requests for the most part. Any questions?
What was the grant to Ruth Ellen Cosman? What was the grant for do you know, for the Licking County Foundation? She received a grant? The very first one? The very first one? Just curious as to what the grant was?
I can't remember what you found the grant for.
486 here.
Yeah, reading books for the bookworm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great.
I was wondering, when you were saying it, I was thinking GEF, but it was Licking County.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
And Freedom to Play 60, which is giving GES a significant grant, he also supports the intermediate school? Is that right?
Yeah, that's
Well, that's the middle school, but
You've gotten grants as well for the intermediate school?
yes.
What's the head of that organization, what's their funding source?
the NFL, Freedom to Play 60.
Great,
Yep.
fantastic.
Thank you, Mamie.
That's all?
Aye.
Mr. Fowler?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Metro report?
Financial report,
Second?
just a couple of things that I want to highlight. Again, there's nothing too unusual going on. Spending looks a little bit out of whack right now. That is because of the timing of the implementation of the new healthcare program. We've made those contributions to employees' HSAs in January. Obviously, we have not made those in prior years. And we're later than we were anticipating because more employees took the higher plan than we were anticipating. That will pay itself back. It just pays itself back over the next 12 months through lower premiums. So the spending is a little out of whack there. The other area where spending is a little higher than expected. Well, there's two really. One is the reconciliation of our STRS payments with the state. We were underpaying last year, so we have a balance that we owe. At the same time, we have to make some back payments, but at the same time, we're implementing a new system, or I've implemented a new system in January for accounting for these payments, so this will not happen again, where we're paying based on actual payroll now instead of estimated payroll, so that any reconciliation that has to happen, there'll be money set aside. If we ended up underpaying through the foundation, we'll have already made the payments out of the operating budget. So this will not happen again. And then the third item, which actually gets us into the last thing I want to talk about, is we had our revised contract with the Lincoln County ESC. They had underestimated our costs from last school year significantly, especially in the area of preschool. And so we have $143,000 worth of payments we are making back to them for last year's preschool costs. We're now starting, we will start being deducted from our foundation, I think, probably the next foundation payment. And it kind of gets us into the last payment of the report, with the cost of road down, and that is our preschool costs. Jeff and I have had several meetings now with the ESC. Turned out last year, our final bill for preschool was almost $418,000 to educate 26 students, but about 15 or 16 FTE students. It worked out to about over $32,000 per pupil to do preschool education. That is a cost that is high, unreasonable.
It's unsustainable. Unsustainable.
It's unsustainable. This year, our actual costs are going down because we have fewer kids in preschool this year, but we are paying on an FTE basis this year over $33,000 a kid Again, total costs are lower because we're, last year we had 26 kids, this year we only have, I think, 11 or 12, something like that. And so there's fewer kids that are lowering the costs. They are looking at some cost controls through the preschool provision of services. And Jeff had another meeting with them last week on that.
Yeah, they're going to do some restructuring, and which will result in about a 15% decline in the per month cost. But, the ESC is designed for economy of scale, so that you can realize cost efficiency because you don't have to offer the services yourself. What we're seeing, though, is that the cost of the entire program is, in my word, inflated. And so they need to do some reorganization and some reprioritizing within the ESC to get the cost down. That being said, preschool, special needs preschool is expensive. And we find that, if you look at the categories that are articulated in school age funding, category 6 is almost $27,000 per student. We don't see a fraction of that because of our state share index. And the same is true for preschool funding. So again, preschool funding is subject to our state share index. So whatever we're supposed to get from the state gets adjusted based on our wealth. And it's a struggle that, I know Mike has been advocating for at the State House, that the cost to educate students that have special needs should not be subject to any state share index deduction. So the cost is the cost. So the state should bear some of the responsibility for funding that more in totality. So we are pushing on the ESC to try and lower their costs as much as possible. And they struggle with some of the same issues that we struggle with from the standpoint of when people enroll, they are our public preschool. And so we take anybody. Rightly so, we are a public school system. So they're challenged in that way as well. So do you want to elaborate on? So our goal is to continue to look at preschool and other ways that we can provide a similar service at a reduced cost. Bottom line, OTs, PTs, speech, psych, all of the services that are part of the wraparound preschool are expensive. And so we're challenging to try and get the ESC to lower their costs, but we're also going to look outside of that at other providers.
Do most of the districts in our area also look to the ESC to provide those services?
Sure. So some of the bigger school districts provide their own services because they have scale. But some of the smaller districts, us, Licking Valley, Heights, Johnstown, Northridge, Utica, all use flying colors. And I thought I said, yeah.
Is it your sense that the costs are obviously high because of the nature of the services that are provided, but is it your sense that that the ESC is less efficient maybe at providing those services than some of the larger districts around here? I guess what I'm getting at is, one of the things I think we would ask you to do is look at alternatives, come back to us, and make recommendations about whether there are ways to do it better, certainly without lowering the standards, but ways that maybe we could partner with other schools to find more efficiencies in operations. So the question is whether you see those efficiencies in place in some of the larger schools that are providing those services, or whether that could be obtained through partnering with some of the smaller schools that also look to the ESC.
Yeah. So two thoughts. One, I think we have a new superintendent at the ESC who is coming in with a fresh look at some of the cost expenditures across all of the services that they provide. So we have been encouraging him to take a very close look at all of his expenditures. The second thing that I would say is, while we look at those, there are consultants that will come in and look at, how we could do preschool ourselves. It's usually an 18-month process through the certification board process, because you have to be independently licensed by the State Department. But we're looking at all of those things. So we're hoping to come back to you and say, yes, we either stay with the ESC, or no, we need to look at doing this someplace else or internally with other districts joining us.
Are kids getting
Served?
what they need?
Absolutely. I mean, from a service standpoint, Flying Colors does a phenomenal job. Their teachers are very well trained, and they do an amazing job. And when they come to us as school age,
They're prepared?
I don't know that they're prepared, but they are ready to enter the school age environment.
That's what I meant by prepared.
Yeah, but I think, we had influxes of groups of 12 students coming into the kindergarten at one time. That's a high number, but I think they've done a very good job given the circumstances.
What's an average class size? I mean,
There's state ratios, so it is 8 to 1, and you have to have a certain number of, I hate the language, it's the state's language, not ours, typical children embedded into those programs.
And it has to be a 1-to-1 ratio. So in a classroom, if you have 6 special needs students, you also are required to have 6
Right.
non-special needs students.
Yeah.
I guess the question that I was asking was, are we seeing an unusual number of children needing services? Is that number growing?
So our number yo-yos.
Okay.
So
That's
we've
what I-
gone from 26 to 11 to 23 to 5.
And it's not predictable?
It's
of
not
course.
predictable.
Yeah.
It's very unpredictable.
Yeah.
Which would make it difficult to take it on ourselves with that sort of.
Correct. Yeah, because in the year that we have 5 students, we're overstaffed and we're riffing. In the years of 26, we're getting more staff. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean,
Could I ask one other
Sure.
question? How, at what age do children, does it depend on the need, but at what age would those services start up until kindergarten age?
Yeah, so it starts at 3.
Okay.
And then, and there's also itinerant services and services that are part of Flying Colors.
2 years ago, we actually did a lot of the services in-house because we had a small number, a lot of it was speech, and we had a little excess capacity.
Right.
But then the numbers grew both in the preschool and among our own students for speech, for speech needs, and we just didn't have the capacity to do it in-house. So last year, we moved almost all of it back to Flying Colors. 2 years ago, we did a significant portion of the speech work here in the district.
Preschool education is so important, right? And we're really fortunate in Greenville that our kids come in prepared, right? But there are certainly lots of cases, right, where the family doesn't have that capacity, or maybe there are needs that are beyond that, and those are really important that we continue to serve those, so those kids can be functional members of our school districts and society and things. So this is a really high priority to make sure it's done right. It's a huge cost. Yeah, that's really a stellar number. And I think like any big expense that we have, we scrutinize it, right? And whether it be a capital expenditure or whether it be one of our facilities and the efficiency and so forth. And I think this is one that's ripe for opportunity in terms of at least understanding and convincing ourselves that this is being spent best. Because within our always limited budget, right? I think there's got to be opportunities there, and I really love the idea about collaborating with other districts, right? I know it's hard to think we can just do everything ourselves, and I'm not sure that's the right decision here, but I think opening up the conversation right now and taking a really good, hard, solid financial look at it in parallel with an understanding of the importance of the education, I think is really timely. So thank you for taking that on, and I support that. If there's anything more you need from us, come back and let us know, and we'll go from there.
Will do. Any other questions as far as the financial report? Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Coleman?
Aye.
Mr. Cronin?
Aye.
Ms. Davis? Mr. James?
Aye. We'll entertain a motion to enter into executive session. Second.
There will be no action after.
No further action. Yeah. Take the roll.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Coleman?
Aye.
Mr. Cronin?
Aye.
Dr. Foreman?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye. Thank you all.
You're not done yet.
It's taking only 2 or 3 hours.